Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kathy Fernandez. I am the City of Sunny Isles Beach Media Manager. Thank you for joining us for our 2018 Hurricane Preparedness Workshop. We have a great program prepared for you tonight where we will learn how to prepare your condo, your home, your business, or your hotel. We also have information on evacuation zones and routes, what to expect after a storm, as well as available hurricane resources pre, during, and post-storm. Before we get started, I would like to ask everyone to take a moment to mute all phones, pagers, beepers, iPads, and any other mobile devices you may have. As you came in, we were handing out Miami-Dade County's Hurricane Readiness Guide, which looks like this right here. You should have one of those in front of you. If you do not, please see our wonderful volunteers in the back. They'll be able to get these for you. It's going to be a great resource for you with tons of information, which we will reference throughout the presentation. Included in that guide, we also had a question card for you. This question card, if you come across any questions throughout the program, we just kindly ask that you jot down that question throughout the program so we're not interrupting the presentation. And then at the end of the presentation, we will open it up for question and answer. During that time, you can raise that card up in the air. We'll come around to collect that question card from you, and we'll go ahead and bring that question up to the panel. Tonight, you will hear from Chris Russo, City Manager, City of Sunny Isles Beach; Clay Parker, City of Sunny Isles Beach Building Official; Chief Fred Moss, City of Sunny Isles Beach Police Department; and Susan Simpson, Assistant City Manager for Public Works and Culture and Community Services. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up Chris Russo.
Thanks, Kathy. First of all, I want to assure everybody here, we have a very seasoned team that has been through this before, in fact, multiple times. The people sitting here have worked storms, hurricanes for many years, so this is not something new to our staff, and they do an excellent job at it. We're in hurricane season. It started June 1, runs through November 30th. We're totally in a floodplain, flood-prone, and any other words you can use that relate to high winds and flooding area. So when there is a hurricane here, as many of you may know, the answer is we evacuate. And that is the easy part of it. There's a lot of complications that causes, and that the results are, can be difficult. Each of our speakers is going to talk about various issues with regard to hurricanes, pre, during, and after. I'm going to just highlight a few things that are important to note. Very, very important is pre-registration for emergency evacuations. And what I mean by this is when you have to evacuate, they open shelters and things for people. They have bus locations to be picked up. You can drive there. But there's many people who are either medically or physically, or medical equipment is necessary for them to live. And those people, I can't emphasize enough, have to pre-register to be able to be taken care of in a storm. What has happened inevitably with every storm is there's always some people last minute getting a call by them, by a relative, a friend, letting us know that this person is there with some medical or other situation that they're not mobile. It is important to do that now, to register now. The county's brochure and a number of things that I'm just going to mention are all in here or on the county's website. But one of the things is they say that it's first come, first serve. First come, first serve means that they're not sure when, but at a given point, they're not going to be able to handle anymore. You can't wait till the emergency. We have people in the back of the room today to help you, volunteers with us that will help you with a number of things that will come up, one of which is those forms and how to fill them up. So after this meeting, make sure you get those forms. If you know anybody for condo managers or board members who are here, make sure you take that back to your people. Two things two major things happen here. We have tropical storms and we have hurricanes. And for each one, there's what's called a watch and a warning. For a tropical storm, a watch is something that is declared about 48 hours before there may be a storm. That means that something is possible. If we get to a warning, that means it's expected and expected within 36 hours. So it is important to watch and pay attention to the weather. It's a similar situation with regard to hurricanes. The big difference between the hurricane watch and warning, again, you watch before you warn. When you watch, it's possible. When there's a warning, it's expected. It's the wind speed, it's the magnitude of the storm. A tropical storm is winds that are under 74 miles an hour, and a hurricane starts at about 74 miles an hour and up. One of the things that you need to know is that whether or not a hurricane is declared, whether or not a tropical storm reaches the height of its winds, a number of things could happen, even if there is no evacuation. Our parks could be closed, our beaches could be closed. You have to follow the school district to find out. A lot of times, school may close also. These winds, even 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds, can take down trees. It could take down wires, electrical wires, and things like that. And I just want to make one comment on that slide there. That is Irma and the track that it took. Irma was predicted to go up the east coast of Florida, the dotted line to the right. It went up the west coast of Florida. What did many people that I know who left and evacuated? They drove northwest, went northwest thinking they're out of it. And little did they know. So you don't want to react too early, but you want to be prepared. You want to have a place to go. Storms are unpredictable. That's the point there. These next slides, I'm not going to get into detail with. They are on the county's website, and they are in this brochure. And in a nutshell, it's a lot of common sense things to do. Have plenty of non-perishable foods in your house. If power goes out, keep your refrigerator and your freezers closed most you can. If we have power outages, you have to make sure you're very careful once the power comes back on to throw out things that may have gone bad and what have you. When in doubt, throw it out. And a point about power outages is, as many of you know, the city is going through a major project that the city is paying for as opposed to the paving of the road, Collins, that the state is. We are undergrounding all the overhead utility wires that are distribution wires in our city. That is a major undertaking that this city planned almost from the day it was incorporated. It is something that takes many years to accomplish and quite a bit of money. And we are in the probably halfway done with the undergrounding of the utilities on Collins. We've put in all the conduits. We have all the plans and everything underway. It's going to be about 2 more years, I would say, before you no longer see distribution wires on Collins. But that will be a major improvement and a major hardening of our city, which will make it much safer after a storm to avoid those electrical live wires that could be on the streets. Okay, just remember, food and water, medical needs, first aid needs, 30-day supply, communications, make sure that you have batteries, make sure your phones are charged, make sure you've got chargers that are charged, gasoline, make sure your cars are filled with gasoline, and make sure you take enough cash money out of the banks. ATM machines don't work during a hurricane. This app, these 2 apps here, I downloaded onto my phone. One is the FEMA app and one is the Miami-Dade County app. And I will tell you that my initial reaction from my own experience is the Miami-Dade app has things that you will probably want to know and easily accessible on the app before, during, and after a storm. No question. So if any of you have any issues with, downloading things, our volunteers in the back are here to help you. Right after this with any of those items of technology, so to speak. The volunteers are in the back. With regard to evacuations, once the county declares that we have to evacuate, everyone has to evacuate. Single-family homes, condominiums, the hotels. People, again, I can't emphasize enough about pre-registering for anyone that has any special needs. How many here would evacuate to a shelter? Raise your hand. Okay.
Scary.
So we understand this is a difficult thing to do. We had quite a few. I'm not going to mention percentages because I'm not sure, but I know it was probably the highest percentage that the city's probably ever had that evacuated in Irma. I'm guessing, but I think I'm probably correct. You're not supposed to stay. It would be a very, very good idea if you could make plans ahead of time so you know you do have a place to go, but you are supposed to evacuate under a hurricane. So I can't emphasize enough to have a place to go, and if you know of any, or if you can find out from the condo presidents and managers that are here who has special needs, that's critical. Evacuation centers and local pickups. We have 5 in our city. They're listed. They're on our website. There are numbers you can call at the county to find out about these, the 311. There's other numbers that are listed in here. That's important if you do evacuate, which, like I said, you should. One of the other things with shelters, how many have pets that they're concerned about? Okay, so people do have pets, but you're not going to go to the shelter. I got it. Hopefully you have a place to go. But if you don't, and if you have to go to a shelter, you need to just keep in mind, if you want to take care of your little pet, make sure you have their medical records, vaccines, and proof of your residency. Generally speaking, we have quite a few avenues for you to get information before, during, and after a storm. There's a ton of it. Besides the radio stations and NOAA radio, which has been around forever, we've got the city website, the county website, all the city's social media outlets. You do have the ability, until we have to evacuate, to speak to the building department, to speak to the police department, general business line for any questions or information you may have regarding hurricane preparation or what you should do. The cable channels, they're listed here, the ones that we'll have information on. The county's website is a very, very good source. The other thing that other speakers will bring up, but it's very important to your benefit, if you don't have a city ID, get it. There's various aspects of the process that we go through, again, before, during, and after, where it would be important to have a city ID. With that, those are the highlights that I want to bring up, and I want to turn this over to Clay Parker, our building official. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. How many of you live in condominiums or apartments? Okay. Because of no one raised their hand about evacuation, I want to explain a little bit. Your buildings, the envelope of your buildings are designed for wind loads. Okay, so it's designed for, and the structural part of your building is designed for wind loads. So you're approved up to so many mile-an-hour winds. But if you have a fracture, like a window breaks out, or just in one unit on your floor, your interior walls are designed for fire load. They're not designed for wind load. And what happens if you have one of your neighbor's windows breaks out, it causes like a balloon effect, and your interior walls could all be gone. How many of you, does anyone live in Arlen House 100? We experienced that in Wilma. So I strongly advise you, if you're told to evacuate. You should evacuate. It's a life safety issue for you. I'm going to go on now. What I'm going to talk about tonight is the procedures our building department and our code enforcement department uses during in the event of an incoming or incoming storm. There you go. The building inspectors will visit each permitted job site and post a secure job poster. Code enforcement officers will notify existing commercial and residential units, informing them, the building managers, to be prepared to secure the buildings, such as getting rid of loose debris. And another thing, if you have a hurricane watch, you should check your fuel levels of your emergency generators and be prepared to tie down and secure your property. We also, code enforcement and the building department, we canvass the entire city to identify possible hazards, such as, sometimes when somebody has a re-roof permit or permit for the roofs on their house, they'll lay the tiles up on the roof for installation, and we go through and we make sure they bundle every stack of tile, and if we see any hazardous conditions, we notify the owners. And for the safety of all, you must comply with officials and building inspectors or suffer the consequences of noncompliance, possible fines or other penalties. Building department requires buildings to empty trash containers, remove construction lumber, and store and secure area and secure the job site. All trash containers or dumpsters must be emptied out, and usually the job sites will have a contracted company to come out and empty the dumpsters out. If they can't get out there in time, they have to secure the dumpsters with a wire mesh covering, and they take all the loose lumber and bring it inside the building. Remove fabric awnings. Anyone that has any property that has a canvas awning, at the time of a hurricane warning, it's supposed to be removed. And that's, the frame can stay there, but you have to remove the canvas awning. Cranes are set on freewheeling, so the wind direction can take the boom of the crane, and it's been found to be the safest way to prepare a crane for these tower cranes for the storms. And you'll see the crane spinning around, but that's the safest position for it to be in. And our department requests your cooperation to ensure that your job site does not become an added concern for our residents prior to and during potential strikes. Code enforcement officers will post hurricane warnings on all commercial and commercial residential properties. The building department visits the construction sites, and code enforcement will visit your buildings and help explain to notify managers to remove all loose items from the balconies. Advise to remove all potted plants. Your potted plants either have to be removed or lashed to the ground, or lashed to the structure, the building. Another good thing for your property managers, it's a good idea to do a video survey of your properties for your homes too. To do a video survey of your properties to see what your properties and your landscaping and look like before the storm. So after the storm, you can have some justification to show your insurance carriers, because in most cases, a lot of landscaping gets damaged. We also require that managers check all units that are vacant to see that the all the windows are down and doors are closed. For that reason I talked about, the envelope of the building needs to be secured. And one open window can cause a lot of damage during a storm. Managers must ensure the windows and doors and hurricane shutters are close to all their buildings and check generators. It's a good idea to try to have your fuel tanks full for the season. After the storm, after the hurricane velocities are experienced and have subsided, the building department inspectors will investigate to determine if damage has occurred to buildings and other structures. If the city of Sunny Isles Beach suffers any damage, the building department performs complete damage assessment inspections on each damaged building or structure of the property. Building department will assess the amount of damage and ask for assistance from other communities if necessary. In my profession, we all get called into other cities after the storm. I went to Hurricane Andrew down in southwest Dade County. My building department during Katrina went to Mississippi. And if the event happens that we need help here, we'll have the assistance from other communities. And they will be properly identified. If we do get any volunteer assessment people, they'll be properly identified for your security, so you'll know that they're volunteers. Damage assessment is a combined effort from all departments. The building department, enforcement, public works, engineering, and police department all have an important role in this assessment effort. Damage assessments help our community to protect the public works agency in response to active search and rescue, such as search and rescue. Recovery operations include removal of storm debris and rebuilding and repair of infrastructure. During Irma, we had power lines come down. We had other infrastructure damages, but they were quickly repaired. That concludes my part of the discussion. I would like to introduce you to Fred Moss, our Chief of the Police Department. Thank you.
I just want to take a second here and acknowledge Aletha Player, who is one of our partners. Aletha is our government rep from Florida Power and Light. She has been here since the beginning of this city, and I can tell you we could not have done it without her, with the cooperation that we get from FP&L in this city. And this undergrounding project we're going through right now could not have been done at all without her help. And I just want to thank Aletha for her support.
So good evening, everyone. First thing I want to do is to thank you, recognize you, and commend you. I think that your buildings that you are representing in whatever fashion it is, as a property manager, a condo president, head of security, whatever it is, they should be indebted to you for showing the interest on their behalf and being here and being able to take the message back to them. So on behalf of the city and the police department, we certainly appreciate your interest and your desire to become more aware of what to do before, during, and after a storm. So the police department's operations are basically threefold. The very first one is pre-storm. The pre-storm for the role of the police department is basically to support the other divisions of the city, such as the building department, the code enforcement department, as they go around to inspect properties, advise construction sites to tie their systems down to make the area safe, and the same thing for buildings with any type of code issues. make sure that things are removed from the balcony, make sure that things are tied down so they're not flying missiles during the course of the storm. We also are there to ensure that people do, if there is a mandatory evacuation, that they get out of the city quickly and safely and smoothly. So our officers are there to help facilitate any evacuation routes. With regards to Parks and Recreation, also to go around and ensure that the city employees have done everything they can to secure the parks and the different infrastructure that is inside the park there. We're there to, as I said, ensure mandatory evacuations and also to make sure that people who are special needs or needed to get assistance to a shelter have accomplished that. That is the importance, as was mentioned earlier, about pre-registration. Very, very important that if you have people in your building, they pre-register, they're out of the building well in advance that they get to wherever it is that they're supposed to be, especially if it is medically assisted. I know in the last storm we had a situation where just a short time before tropical storm force winds were picking up, there was a couple that was sitting on a bus bench at 174th Street in Collins. Fortunately, a police officer, a marked unit, passed by and he stopped to check on them and they said, "We're waiting for the public transportation to take us to one of the shelters." That wasn't going to happen. So they had called down there, and what had happened was the public transportation had already ceased because the storm was getting so close and the winds were picking up. The officers very astutely put them in their car and made sure that they got to a safe location, to an evacuation, just by chance. God knows how long they would have been sitting there thinking that someone was coming for them, when in reality, they had waited too long and they weren't. So pretty much pre-storm, that's the role of the police department. The next part of it is what happens during the storm. Well, at a certain point, 45 miles an hour, tropical storm force winds, the police departments, first responders, fire departments are also ordered to seek safe shelter. They are no longer out on the road. There are liability issues, there are insurance issues, there are workman's comp issues. We have to follow the same mandatory evacuations and directives that everybody else does, especially under county rule. So when the county says that that's it, there are not going to be any more responses, they need to seek safe shelter. That's very, very important for people who do not evacuate. Okay, they may pick up the phone and think, well, I'll just call 911, expecting response. That is not the case. Okay, we will always try to get to somebody's emergency, but there are situations where if there's high water, storm surge, flooding, that we are not allowed to go out there as well. If it is really, really expected to be bad, a Category 5 that's coming in from the east and is going to flood the area, we even have to get off of the island. We're expected to get off the island and seek safe shelter on the opposite side, on the mainland. So, and that is required of us to do. If we violate, we could suffer the consequences, especially if there's any injury to our first responders. So during the storm, it's a wait-and-see attitude for us. We have never had to leave the city. We have been very, very fortunate. This building is extremely well-built, will withstand a lot. We have not had the direct hit threat where we have had to actually leave the island, which is a good thing. The police department is split exactly into half. It's called Alpha Bravo. Half of the shift is on duty, half is off, and then they switch places. But you have to understand sometimes it's not safe for them to come in during the storm either. So a lot of times the police department must stay longer than 12 hours, maybe 16, 18 hours until the storm is passed to come in. Post-storm, okay, this is where everything really kicks in. Again, we support the other entities. Probably the most important is the building department. They will be the first ones, the building officials, to come back onto the scene, into the city, and begin assessment damage, both of your buildings, but of also government owned properties, the parks, recreations. They have to do structural assessments. So they need to be the first ones to go. We will go with them to the different buildings, to the different areas to assess the damage. In the last storm, as you know, there were a lot of electric poles down, there were live wires down, there were wires down that may or may not have been dead wires. There was a lot of situations that the streets were blocked. It was not able to allow traffic to come back in immediately. If businesses are compromised and windows are blown out, the last thing we want is for people, undesirables, to come from another area to begin looting or taking advantage of businesses where the owners are not there, they're not able to secure their businesses. Okay, we had this happen in Wilma, and we had a number of businesses that were compromised. Well, we don't have the manpower to respond to emergencies as well as sit there and make sure that people aren't looting from the businesses. We put the city in a lockdown from 11 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. This was after Wilma. The people in this city were so grateful and felt so secure when they saw the police overnight going up and down the streets with their lights on and checking the area, but more importantly, that there was a blockade at all the entrances and the exits to the city. The only people that were being allowed back in were people who had a purpose and a reason to be here, not somebody wanting to come over, oh, we just want to check out the beach and see the area and see how things are. That doesn't fly, especially when you're in a compromised situation. So after Irma, it was more difficult. We had damage. We had a couple of twisters that came through. If people saw the north end of the city at 189th Street, they would have realized the gravity of the situation. There were poles down. There were live wires down. There were roofs that had been blown off of some of the properties on the east side. They were in the streets. The streets were not clear. There was no traffic lights at all. So to have people driving around with absolutely no traffic control would have been extremely perilous. We had to wait until the situation, and it was a call by the city manager, the mayor, and the police chief, myself, to make a decision as to how soon we could get the city back safe. The last thing we would want is for some small child to be walking around with or without the parents, or even teenagers being out, and a pole or a tree that is compromised to come down, strike and injure or kill somebody. That's a liability we cannot and will not incur. So we will make sure that everything is as safe as possible before people are allowed back in. So we are there to respond to emergencies at this point as they come up. We're there to direct traffic. As you know, after Irma, we had police officers at basically every intersection that was out there to just assist with keeping traffic moving, showing a little bit of signs of life as people return. One of the biggest questions that are asked is, well, how do we know when we can return? How do we get our key people back? You condo representatives, whatever your role is there, we know that you want to get your electricians back. We know you want to get your building people back, your maintenance people, maybe your property management people. So we have tiers, different tiers that we will allow people through the checkpoints to get back to check onto their building. However, your building will only be allowed to have people come back after the building officials, Clay Parker and his team, have gone there, assessed whether it's damaged or not, everything is structurally safe. Once they give the all clear, your building people are allowed to come back, okay? And it will be on levels of importance, okay? We have to get them in first, all right? And then at some point, the residents will be allowed to come back. One of the things that, the same goes for our businesses. A lot of time, business owners will leave, and when they come back, or they'll call ahead to see if their businesses, if they're able to get back into the city to check on their business. One of the things that we do is, as many of you know, is a check on the welfare. Please let somebody, have your residents let someone know if they evacuated and where they went. It makes it easy when their relatives from up north call and say, I can't reach so-and-so. I don't know if they got out in time or if they got out at all. Do you have any way of checking? We certainly will do that, but it helps a lot when they've left word with somebody, because we'll go to the building and we'll say, no, they evacuated, they're staying with friends in Orlando. or they're over on the West Coast, but they're fine. Same thing with the beaches. Announcements will be made when the beaches are reopened. The best piece of advice that I can give you with regards to communication information is stay tuned to your local media. They have perfected getting information out. Everything from Florida Power and Light to Southern Bell to your Dish TV, everything that you can think of, they have mastered letting you know the storm, the direction, up to the minute news, what you should be doing for yourself and with regards to your building. So they really have, over the years, mastered this. So encourage your people and you yourselves, stay tuned to your local media. You have 311 to call, but they have, as I said, they are a wealth of information. And lastly, I will tell you this. It is never an easy call to determine when it is absolutely safe to have residents return if there has been a mandatory evacuation, okay? That is a call that we have to make. We know that people are inconvenienced. We know that they are out of place. We know that they're worrying about their own personal space and property, but it is incumbent upon us to make the best decision that we can with regards to when it's safe for people to return, and we will always make that. We never want it on the city's responsibility that we were premature just to give in to people and let them come back and then have some tragedy occur. So we ask you to always bear with us on that. It was amazing to see how quickly the city did restore order and the streets were clear. Between the public works and the additional resources that were used and contracted, they were out there quickly. They worked around the clock, and it was an amazing job. If you saw the status of the city as soon as the storm was gone and how quickly they at least had streets clear so people could move about and restore traffic to the area. And then the same thing with the traffic lights. Little by little, everything started to come back, as I said, show signs of life. Captain Snyder, would you like to come up and explain to them a little bit about this? It's always a popular question about what ID do I need to have to get back into the city if there is a checkpoint.
Thank you, Chief. And again, how many people do we have here from the representing buildings or the condos or the, okay, very good. That's a good thing. This is going to be, it's usually, as the Chief said, it's probably the number one question we get asked at these type of meetings is how do we get our people in to do damage assessment? And we have to make sure that we have an orderly, once we are given an all clear, we have to have an orderly way of getting people in to do those things. So the city came up with this tier system where it's going to be prioritized, and there's 3 different tiers. The first tier is only going to be emergency personnel and the people that the city believes are needed to try to get to make sure that we are at least stable and safe and there are no life-threatening hazards that are going to injure anybody. The second tier is going to be mostly for your top-end engineers and your building maintenance people that are going to do your damage assessment on your buildings. And then the third tier, once we get the all clear on that, is going to be your maintenance people that are going to come in and do either landscaping or whatever to start making repairs. The most important thing that you need to understand about the tier system is you're going to have to actually fill out your emergency contact form that they're located in the back, and they're also online, and you have to designate who those people are going to be that are going to respond to these things. And in each tier, each building, each property is going to be given 6 passes, and they're going to be 3 for the second tier and 3 for the third tier. And we're going to have the information in advance because the city is going to send those passes out to you. So we need to make sure that the people we have on our list are going to be the people you're actually sending. And they're going to have to show identification as well. So we make sure that we're getting the right people in. And they're color-coded passes, so that it should be pretty a seamless process if it works right. But we just cannot have everybody rushing back into the city. And we do realize that you're anxious to do your damage assessment, and, you know, there's going to always be that flood of people, but we have to make sure that it's managed. And again, that goes back to safety and making sure that, you know, we don't get a massive amount of people over here that don't belong here. So all of the information is on this emergency contact form, and we please ask you to do this as soon as possible. As a matter of fact, we were going to try to have a date of Monday, July 2nd, to have those forms in, so the city can get these passes out to your buildings, so that we're not waiting at the very last second when the storm is right on top of us before you start doing this stuff. So it's really vitally important for this whole system to work, and I think you'll find that it'll pay dividends. So come down the line. Chief, do you have any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, at this time I
get to introduce.
okay. I'm sorry.
And our last speaker is the Assistant City Manager, and she'll take care of Public Works and the parks and all of the good things that we enjoy. Susan Simpson.
Thank you, everyone, again for coming tonight. And before I get started, as Chris mentioned earlier, it's a really great team that we have here. That it was amazing how quickly we got things going after Irma, and we're going to do it even better this year. But I want you to know who the rest of the people are here. So we have Vice Mayor Dana Goldman is here with us, and you've now met Captain Snyder, Lieutenant Weish. From the City Manager's Office, Deputy City Manager Stan Morris, David Blanco from the Police Department, Elaine Yeesh, Communications Media, Diana Arzumanova. Could you stand up for a quick second? If we do have a situation where we're using volunteers for post cleanup or pre, Diana is our newly designated volunteer coordinator, so she would be the one that you'd be volunteering with. From the City Manager's Office is Evelyn Trammell, who helped us put everything together. Really important is the media team, because they are going to be your eyes and ears before, during, and after a storm. So we have Kathy Fernandez, Leah Einwalter, who's doing Facebook Live, Miranda Tarr, and I already said Elaine Yeesh. Did I say Elaine? Okay. And then the Parks and Cultural and Community Services Department Director is Sylvia Flores, and she's here, and she's got a great team that backs everything up. So, Sylvia. And her lovely daughter, Laura. Okay. And all that. And as Chris mentioned, Aletha Player. We're so grateful you're here today, so thank you for that. I'll be really quick, because I know your questions are probably very specific and what you want to know most, but the Public Works and Cultural and Community Services Department gets everything ready before the storm. So we're securing parks and public facilities, we're cleaning drains, we are prepping the pump station, fueling vehicles, preparing everything for our post-storm recovery. So things may close early so that we can get things ready, like, you know, we can't maintain the parks when we have all of this prep efforts done. The media team will be getting all of that information out to you if things close, open, when an evacuation order is issued, all of those things. So you definitely need to stay informed with them. City programs that happen at Pelican Community Park, such as summer camp if it's summer, after school if school's in session, those will all be suspended in accordance with Miami-Dade County, typically the school board if it's during school season. The Sunny Isles Beach Shuttle, which is our free transportation service, that does shut down at 30-mile-per-hour winds. That's for the safety of everyone, the passengers and our drivers, our employees. This year, we will be offering a sandbag distribution. We didn't do that last year, and we had a situation where people were getting it from the beach. In case if you didn't know, taking sand from the beach is illegal. It's unlawful, so don't do it. We'll have monitors out there to make sure that you don't, but we will be having a sandbag distribution. You will have to have a resident ID card, and it will be announced on social media and through email where that location to pick those up would be. And that will depend on the severity of the storm. If it's a windstorm, you don't need sandbags. If we expect a storm surge, we will have sandbags. Limited parking will be available at 2 of our public parking garages, because a lot of people like to get their vehicles up and out of the weather. That is at the north end at Heritage Park and at the south end at Gateway Park. Again, it's for our residents, so we're going to want to see your resident ID card. You're parking your car there at your own risk. Do not leave your valuables in there. We won't be responsible for those. Under no circumstances are you to park a private vehicle in this government center parking garage. It is for official use only. These guys need every space they can get. So if you've heard a recurring theme here, it is your resident ID card. You really have to have it, so I can't express that enough. If you don't have it already, there's applications, there's people in the back, everybody can help you to get that. Do it now before you need it. Because at the last minute, it's going to take a little time to process, and we won't be able to do that for you. As I mentioned, the volunteers are in the back, and Diana, again, will be our volunteer coordinator. During the storm, we just have a skeleton crew here, and that's to help out the police department with whatever they need. So if, winds die down and we can run out and move a tree, we'll take care of that, but they pretty much are letting us know what they need. After the storm, it's all hands on deck. We have to do everything we can to get the city up and running as quickly as possible. Our priority, of course, is our roadways, starting with our major thoroughfares, Collins Avenue, William Lehman, Sunny Isles Beach Boulevard. One of the things we did want to mention is people called and asked about locking down the bridges. Bridges in lockdown means that they're locked closed, so that really affects the people who might be trying to get a boat out, but for vehicular traffic, it's definitely what's best. So there will be a time that the county will make that call and say that all the bridges are locked down. We will be clearing trees, debris, sand. We'll help police with getting intersections back going, whether it's generators for lights or portable stop signs. When the officials give the all clear, once it's safe, everybody's happy. So if you've evacuated, y'all want to come back quick, we need to have the time to get our work done. So it is a high priority. We kind of need everybody out of the way. If we have extra vehicles and pedestrians on the roads and streets, it just slows down the work. So we want to get it done as quickly as possible. So definitely don't go out at that time. Kathy, if you could show just a couple of the slides of some of the pictures. These are some of the things that we saw in the parks. The parks are going to be closed. Bus shelters get shattered. Parks are used as staging debris sites. So we really ask you to bear with us whenever that cleanup process is going on. So since you can't be out there, we're going to rely very heavily again on that media team. They're going to let you know everything that's going on in and around the city. They are your eyes and ears. They will give you more information than you probably want to know. It's like you're walking down the street yourself. So definitely, if you're not already signed up for social media, there's volunteers in the back that can show you how to do that. And also post-storm, you may have power outages, you may have, we may have North Miami Beach water issues or sewer issues. Just so you know, the city does not manage those utilities. That is, as we mentioned, Aletha Player with FPL, not her personally, and North Miami Beach Water. So we are a customer, just like you are, for those utilities, and we do reach out to them when we know of something. So if you have an issue and you've reported it and you're not getting any help, absolutely reach out to us and we will see what we can do in that regard. And finally, you're responsible for your property. So, sorry about that. Party too. You're responsible for your property. So pre-storm, like now, go trim your trees now, get all the debris out, make everything storm ready so that, right before the storm, you're not dealing with bulk pickup out on the swale. Those loose items, as everyone has mentioned, becomes missiles, and we don't want that. So do that ahead of time. After the storm, same thing. The city's going to take care of the streets, the sidewalks, the public facilities, but your property is your property. So we need you to get that cleaned up. In the single-family home area, your bulk pickup is through Miami-Dade County. In the commercial condo hotel, that is whoever your dumpster service is. So it's not the city. We are busy cleaning up all of those other public facility areas. So to expedite the cleanup process, this particular slide, when Miami-Dade County comes through to pick it all up, they need it separated into those different categories. It makes that a whole lot quicker, which makes your neighborhood look a little better and you get back to normal. So to wrap it up, start your preparations now, today, with those people in the back. Download your favorite app, pre-register for emergency evacuation assistance program, sign up for our news alerts on our social media, get your resident ID card, submit your emergency contact forms. If y'all didn't see the tier colors, we have these really awesome things that are gonna be really important to all of you building people. If you don't have this, your employees are not getting back in. So I know your questions are most important. So we have Leah, we have Miranda and Elaine, who will, if anybody wrote down a question, please pass it to one of them, and they will read it aloud so that everybody can hear your question. Elaine, right there.
I may have to get help with the handwriting. It's a question about weather radio.
Okay.
Which is a good weather radio to purchase?
The NOAA radio, right? Is that still in
Actually,
existence?
I don't know if there is, but if you go to Best Buy, they have a portable, if they still have them. It includes the high, what's it called, the HD channel, stations also. It's a rectangular shaped, small radio. There's very few of those left, but they have it and they cover all the stations, even the high definition ones. Yeah, Best Buy.
Okay. Is that-
Make sure you have plenty of
NOAA? No,
And
NOAA weather
it's
radio.
battery, yeah.
And the other question is with regards to would you like to ask this one? I'm not sure I understand where he's
about
coming
the temperature of the ocean. If it is very hot, they say that is a forecast that the storm will be very prominent, Anything on that?
Brian, did you ever do weather?
So he's wondering if
All I can tell you is that from the predictions that they have announced already for this tropical storm season is that it is expected to be higher than normal. That doesn't necessarily mean anything because Hurricane Andrew happened in a year that was expected to be lower than normal, so it's a guess.
I'll make one comment. It is true from all the meteorological reports, it's easy for me to say, that the temperature of the water, when it is higher, it does feed the storm as it is increasing. So there are components there. That's a very valid component to the strength of the storm as it feeds on itself. Okay, so that has been established.
We have another question. Do you have to pay for parking when you park in one of our parking lots?
During this state of emergency, the answer is no, but again, you would need to get that announcement. So we will announce when it starts to be free, and we will announce when we are going to start charging again.
Yes, we're not car storage. Last time, it took a little while to get some of the people to get their cars out.
And keep in mind, if you have friends or relatives that live off the island, we had several people from North Miami Beach trying to park in our parking garage. And then when we were closed after and they couldn't get in, they couldn't get their car out either. So they were left without a vehicle until we were letting everybody back in the city.
We have another question. If one person has a resident ID card, how many people is he allowed to bring with him back in the city?
So the resident ID card is not, is that the question? Okay.
Yes.
The resident ID card is not really getting you back into the city unless if we are under a curfew. So there's two different things. One is if we've evacuated and we're letting people back the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, those are the people that are on that form. You know, the form that Captain Snyder showed you that needs to be filled out for every building. As far as a resident, if we're under curfew, which is different, that means kind of anybody can come in, but under a limited, restricted access, as many as you can fit in your car.
That tier level is for essential personnel for your buildings, your electrical, your maintenance people, things like that. If there is a lockdown of the city, let's say from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. With entrance, that is where your driver's license or your resident ID card would become critical to let you back in as opposed to everybody else. Okay? So as Susan said, there's two different conditions there.
Okay, so here's a question. Would security services responding to buildings for continuing services be considered for entrance to the city?
You want to check out?
I'm sorry, would you repeat it? We were having a sidebar, I'm sorry.
So would security services responding to buildings for continuing services be considered for entrance into Sunny Isles?
If they're on the form, you get 6 people. Each building gets 6 people. You need to make that whomever you deem to be the most important 6 people in your building.
Now, keep in mind, when those initial people come back, those 6 people, and that building has been deemed structurally safe, and they're back there and they've addressed their issues, then it becomes to relax a little bit with regards to additional people coming back in. Of course, we want security there. So once your electrical person, your property management person, they've all been let in, and they deem and they let us know our building is okay. The building department says they're okay, you can let people start coming in. Security, then we begin to relax, and security would be let in. Okay, our goal is to get everybody back as quickly as possible. Okay, but always start with essentials first, because if the building department goes there and something is not structurally safe, they don't even want the essential people going back into that building, okay, because something can happen to them. So that's why we've kind of tiered this back.
And one of the reasons for the really brightly colored cards is that those designated people, I don't know if anybody was sitting on Sunny Isles Boulevard when the street was on lockdown. It took a while just to get up to the checkpoint. This is gonna, you know, you're gonna show this out your window to the officers. They're gonna have this list of the people that are authorized to be there, and they're gonna compare it and get you through quicker. Without this, you're waiting in line.
So we have a question from our Facebook Live feed from Brenda. If you have small children, does the Sunny Isles Beach card apply to them as well? I think she means the resident ID card.
Okay. No, they do not need to have a resident ID card. Small children do not need them.
As long as there was an adult resident.
Yes, as long as they're accompanied by an adult.
You can ask it.
For people, do you mean like a company that has 2 or 3 people who are coming in, or just one person from that company?
What do you, let me clarify, what do you mean by company? An outside company or someone associated with that building?
Yes, somebody associated with the...
No, if they bring a team in and that person's name is on there and he's got 2 of his assistants with him, you know, this is all about common sense and practical applicability. We had to kind of wing it at the last one, but as soon as we knew who the individual was requesting to come in and we contacted someone from that building and they were authorized, they were let in, okay? Our goal is to get you up and running, okay? Yes, property managers, obviously, that we want them back on because they're the people that we will contact to say, are you expecting so-and-so, your mechanical engineer, your electrical engineer, one of your plumbing people to come in.
Hello. I'm a property manager at the Tropicana, and I would ask all of you, please stress the importance of evacuation. The people who stayed behind, only a few of them, the residents, they tampered with the building systems. We had to, one of them was fined because she tampered with the fire alarm. They tried to connect their cellular phones on the elevator lights to recharge them. So when I got back, and they were hysterical on the phone, so when they got back, I had to deal with all of this, hiring the electrician, the fire alarm company. And it's not fair to the other people who evacuate to have people staying and damaging the property.
Believe it or not, we had about 75, we took a poll, there was about 75% compliance with regards to evacuation, which is extremely good, especially in relation to previous years when the mindset was we're not leaving under any circumstances. So it really, really improved. But you're right, those 25%, if I lived on the 37th floor and then that building loses power and I have an emergency there, pretty much you're on your own. You made a bad decision. You made a bad decision to stay, and there's nobody that's going to be able to come and rescue you. And the fire department, number one, isn't going to be able to respond until the storm has passed. Number two, they've got to traipse up 37 floors to get to you because there's no power or your building's generator is not, up and running. So there's a lot of components to making a sound decision there with regards to evacuation. Very good point, though.
Aletha, would you like to make any comments? Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to cover the process that we follow for restoration, because I know I got several questions from the city and residents during Irma. While the building to your left was on and your building was not, and also perhaps some of the units in your building were on and nobody could understand why. Whenever we restore service, we always start with the generator. We have to make sure that we have the capacity to generate electricity. So once those power plants are back on, then we come down to those transmission lines. So we have to get that power out of the power plant to start distributing it, down to the businesses and the houses. So if those transmission lines are back up and operating, the substations, and those are those facilities that they're sometimes enclosed, as we have one on 163rd Street. We have to make sure that all of those facilities within that structure are sufficient and running. And then we have to bring it out to the businesses and homes. Our objective has always been, we want to restore service first to the hospitals and 911 centers. Some of you are fortunate because you may be served on that line that services those primary functions. And once that's done, we want to restore the maximum number of customers initially. What that means is if we can bring you up during that phase, you're back in business. However, sometimes some of you may experience what we call partner current, meaning there's some appliances in your homes that's not working. And also, we will wait. That particular process you'll be on hold because, again, our objective is to bring the maximum number of customers back on as possible. Once we finish that, your problem may be associated with the transformer that serves a minimum number of customers. It's not always pleasant to be able to deliver those messages to the city or to a residence, but that transformer is the last piece of equipment that we restore power. I remember getting a call, Golden Beach, just up the street. I think there are about 400 houses in Golden Beach, and all of them were back on except for 10. And that's because those 10 were served by transformers, and they are all underground. And again, it was because there was an isolated piece of equipment that required our attention, but we were steadily working on those what we call the feeders or the main lines that will bring back the maximum number of customers. And the thought behind it is we want to bring the cities, this community back to normal as soon as we can, as soon as possible. We want those kids to go back to school. We want the parents to be able to go back to work. And we're able to achieve that by following the process that has been proven and tested over and over again. So I ask for your patience, during that time when it's perhaps just your apartment. Sometimes it may be internal to your building, but we're going to get there, but we're focusing on bringing back the maximum number of customers and businesses as soon as we can. And I'll entertain questions. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
We have one more question from Facebook Live. This is for probably police department. How will owners that want to check on their property that do not have resident ID cards, how will that be handled? When will they be allowed to enter the city?
Okay, the last part of it, for affecting whom?
How will owners that want to check on their property but they don't have resident ID cards, how is that going to be handled? When are they going to be allowed to enter the city?
Well, first of all, I would extremely encourage them to get the resident ID card. What would happen next in lieu of that would be their identification card, driver's license, Florida resident card, something that showed their picture, their address, verifying that they are a property owner and they do have business in the city. Okay?
If I can just add to that really quick, there's a lot of absent owners. I know perhaps you own the property here, but you live in Aventura or somewhere else, and you are concerned, but rightfully so, you can't get a resident ID card and your driver's license doesn't say that. Our media team was really good last year in social media. If people asked, how is my building or what's going on in my building, they were really quick to get that information and get it posted as quickly as possible. They sent out a seamless doc. It was a form. They sent it to all the buildings so that they could find out from the buildings if they had power, if they had water, if they had cable, do they need any emergency services. So there's other ways, even if you can't physically get into the city, because rightfully so, you probably shouldn't be in here, there's still other ways to get that information.
So I think we're going to wrap this up, but before we do, I'd like to ask if our vice mayor wants to make a comment, or anything representing our mayor or our city commission.
Just really want to acknowledge and give a great debt of gratitude to really incredible post-Irma recovery. It was daunting, it was triage, it really was, it does, as they say, take a village. And really, the work, the just tireless efforts, the great sophistication and coordination and organization of our city really just speaks volumes. Even this event this evening really speaks volumes about the caliber and the level of professionalism on every aspect and every facet of our city operations. So great shout out and thanks to our city manager, our city staff, everybody that makes our city so wonderful. This night is no different.
Thank you, and don't forget to see our people in the back for any of these issues that came up tonight. Thank you. And information, and the brochures are there, and what else?
If there's a question that you think of later when you get home and you don't know, through our website, there's an opportunity to ask a question through our website. So we encourage you, go on there, post the question, we'll get you an answer right away. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.